comes in a bottle or a box. As the Thanksgiving weekend comes to a close, you may feel as overstuffed as that turkey you ate. And if you're overweight, and the chances are you are, it's probably because you eat too much of the wrong stuff. Most of the wrong stuff we eat comes in a bottle, a can, or a box, food that's been processed. Much of that food has been flavored. The flavoring industry is the enabler of the food processing business, which depends on it to create a craving for everything from soda pop to chicken soup. It is Willy Wonka and his chocolate factory as a multi-billion-dollar industry, an industry cloaked in secrecy. But recently, Givaudan, the largest flavoring company in the world, allowed us in to see them work their magic.
The will continue in a moment.
So definitely an aroma. The mandarin, Dancy tangerine. Real mild though, not in your face.
These are super sniffers, super tasters.
And more bitter.
On the prowl, the special forces, first responders to the call for the next best taste.
The mandarin notes are fantastic.
Yeah.
They're braving the wilds of a citrus grove in Riverside, California, where Jim Hassel, whose nose and palate are legendary, leads a Givaudan team on a taste safari. Big game hunters in search of the next great taste in soft drinks. Their inspiration, the greatest flavorist of them all, Mother Nature.
Seeing everything that's available really just drives the whole creative process.
Like an artist going to Rome or something.
Correct.
But the ultimate purpose is to sell more soft drinks or whatever.
That's what we're in the business of. Selling flavors.
Let's go sniffing. Our perception of taste is largely located in the nose, but described in the language of music.
Do you get like a tropical note, a little bit of papaya, potentially?
Yeah, cotton candy note.
Cotton candy a little bit.
They're plotting how to move the flavors they find in this grove to your supermarket shelf, and then on to your stomach.
I can see it in a sports drink. I can see it in a water, flavored water. And I also can see it in a twist on an orange carbonated beverage.
When they find something they like, they extract its flavor molecules from the fruit on the tree. Then back in the lab, they mimic Mother Nature's molecules with chemicals. Essentially what you do is you take whatever this smells like and copy it.
Right, exactly.
And then I suppose you could, if you choose to, you could quote-unquote improve on it.
Exactly. Yes, we all the time.
The holy grail, a flavor so good you can't resist it.
In our fruit flavors, we're talking about we want, a burst in the beginning and maybe a finish that doesn't linger too much so that you want more of it.
And you don't want a long linger because you're not going to eat more of it if it lingers.
So it's going to be a quick fix. And then
have more.
But that suggests something else.
Exactly.
Which is called addiction.
Exactly.
You're trying to create an addictive taste.
It's a good word.
Or something that they want to go back for again and again.
Food companies know that flavor is what makes repeat customers. So they commissioned Givaudan to create what they hope will be a mouth-watering taste. Givaudan may be the biggest multinational you've never heard of. The Swiss company employs almost 9,000 people in 45 countries, providing tastiness to just about every cuisine imaginable. There's a lot of secrecy involved in your profession, correct?
Our intellectual property are our formulas. Without that, we have nothing, so there's a lot of secrecy. You really don't want anyone to know.
My world is making things taste good.
Soda pop and chewing gum flavorist Michelle Hagan has helped Givaudan and the food companies make billions with her secret formulas.
I create thousands of flavors, so I need somewhere to put them. And I have a lot of flavors in here.
What are these?
So here are some oranges and tangerines.
750 flavors, orange, tangerine, mandarins.
Raspberry is one of my favorite. I can't even fit all my raspberries on here.
How different can raspberries be?
Oh, very different, very different. Oh, yeah. You can make them jammy, you can make them sweet, you can make them floral, you can make them seedy. It's endless, really.
And the flavor ingredients might not have ever met a raspberry.
I have butyric acid artificial, and then I have butyric acid natural.
All flavors are combinations of chemicals. Artificial flavors are largely man-made. Natural flavors come from nature, but not necessarily from what the label implies. For example,
Strawberry creations.
strawberry and vanilla flavor can come from the gland in a beaver's backside.
So what we do is just manipulate them and create with them and give the impression of, the papaya or the strawberry.
Hagen is an illusionist. She's even created a flavor that mimics the taste and smell of an old oak tree.
To give whiskey a little bit more depth sometimes, a young whiskey.
Oh, to give the taste of the barrel it was supposed to have been aged
Yeah.
in, correct?
Yes. Yeah, you can add some cask notes, some oak notes. Okay, here we go.
Hassel and Hagen let us in on the alchemy of inventing a new flavor. This one inspired by a Hong Kong kumquat that the team found not in Hong Kong, but back in Riverside. It's a process using hundreds of different notes until they've created a symphony of taste.
I mean, with a name like Hong Kong kumquat, you really have to have something going on, I think.
But I'm curious to see the carrot on top of the kumquat.
That is interesting. That is very interesting.
You get the citrus, but you have the carrot poking its head out,
Yeah, it's very complex.
but not overpowering.
That's really exciting. This is a home run.
There's no shortage of metaphors in the flavoring business. Givaudan goes to the ends of the earth scouting for new flavors. In Hong Kong, Givaudan convened their annual conclave of top chefs from restaurants around the world to demonstrate their latest creations. The goal, to turn those creations into new commercial flavors. The chefs mixed, chopped, mashed, steamed, sauteed, and smoked for a week to create irresistible cutting-edge cuisine. Hong Kong chef Alvin Leung didn't disappoint.
It makes you want to eat this again and again and again, okay? It's like sex, okay? You want to do it over and over again until you get a headache.
How did you lose so much weight? What kind of How did you lose so much weight? What kind of diet are you on?
The short answer is I went on essentially a plant-based diet. I live on beans, legumes, vegetables, fruit. I drink a protein supplement every morning, no dairy. I drink almond milk mixed in with fruit and a protein powder, so I get the protein for the day when I start the day out. And it changed my whole metabolism, and I lost 24 pounds, and I got back to basically what I weighed in high school. But I did it for a different reason. I wanted to lose a little weight, but I didn't ever dream this would happen. I did it because after I had this stent put in, I realized that even though it happens quite often that after you have bypasses, you lose the veins because they're thinner and weaker than arteries. The truth is that it clogged up, which means that the cholesterol was still causing buildup in my vein that was part of my bypass. And thank God I could take the stents. I don't want it to happen again. So I did all this research, and I saw that 82% of the people since 1986 who have gone on a plant-based, no dairy, no meat of any kind, no chicken, turkey. I eat very little fish. Once in a while I'll have a little fish, not often. If you can do it, 82% of the people who've done that have begun to heal themselves. Their arterial blockage cleans up. The calcium deposit around their heart breaks up. This movement has been led by a doctor named Caldwell Esselstyn at the Cleveland Clinic, Dean Ornish from Genoa in California, the doctors Campbell, father and son, who wrote the China study, and a handful of others. But we now have 25 years of evidence. And so I thought, well, since I need to lose a little weight for Chelsea's wedding, I'll become part of this experiment. I'll see if I can be one of those that can have a self-clearing mechanism. We'll see.
I hope you're healthy for many years and get to see grandchildren for many years
Me
to
too.
come.
That's really the big deal.
and his saliva will accommodate. But man likes to pretend he has claws. Oh yeah, he picks up a fork and then a knife, and he goes, "Rawr, I'm a meat-eating animal. Look at my claws." Who are you kidding? Hydrochloric acid, HCl. The meat-eating animal produces 10 times more hydrochloric acid than you do. You do not produce enough hydrochloric acid to neutralize the toxins that are in meat, because meat is 75% toxic to the human body. Did you know that? 75% of what's in flesh is toxic to your body. It's cholesterol, waste products, hormones, fat, and blood, which carries diseases. Now, Dr. Kellogg, when he was teaching at Battle Creek, and no matter who came there, everybody got this lesson. You know, 2 presidents of the United States went to Battle Creek. Did you know that? Taft and I think it was Coolidge, but Taft for sure. Royalty from Europe would come because, you see, when their physicians couldn't figure out what to do, they say, go to Battle Creek. Mr. Kellogg seems to be ahead of everybody else. And you know why he was ahead? He told everybody, I read Ellen White. And what she doesn't agree with, I throw it out, so I move ahead. The rest of them are still trying to figure it out. I don't have to do that. I don't waste my time. Anyway, on one of the night's lectures, even if you were President Taft sitting there, he would bring out a bacteriologist. This bacteriologist would have a plate of steak on it, and he would have another plate of manure. And he said there is more bacteria in the steak than in the manure. So you would be safer to eat the cow pie instead of the cow itself. Now, the biggest giveaway of all that you're a vegetarian animal is this amazing digestive tract that you have. The digestive tract of vegetarian animals are 10 times the length of the animal's torso. And guess what? Yours is about 30 to 40 feet long, 10 times the length of your torso. The digestive tract of a meat-eating animal is very short. It is only 3 times the length of the animal's torso, so that when the meat goes in, it can evacuate out quickly. But because there's no fiber in meat or dairy products, when these products get inside this digestive tract, they get impacted. They get caught. Fruits and vegetables, because they're full of fiber, think of fiber as a sponge, okay? It helps push it through this 30 to 40 feet. Well, fruits and vegetables, when they go in here, are out in 12 to 15 hours. Because there's no fiber in meat or dairy products, do you know how long it can take them to go through this 30 to 40 feet? Up to 3 days. Do you know what happens to this flesh inside here after 3 days? It putrefies. How many women do you know would set a chicken out to thaw and 3 days later serve it to her family? Put some hamburger on the counter, 3 days later serve it to her family. Of course you wouldn't. Why? It's rotten. What do you think happens here in 3 days? It's 100 degrees, isn't it? 98.6. It's dark, it's acidic, which means it's a perfect breeding ground for bacteria and putrefaction. So if it doesn't get out, it putrefies, which means that flesh in 3 days is going to poison your blood. You're going to be slow, you're going to be irritable and cranky. And you wonder why. It's because you're being poisoned from the inside out, and you don't even know it. So what I'm telling you is, you are a vegetarian machine. You can eat meat, you'll still be my friend, maybe not for as long, but you'll still be my friend. You see, in the animal kingdom, there are over 200 communicable diseases. That means they pass on to each other. Of those 200 diseases, half of them will cross over into humans, which means we can get 100 diseases from the animal kingdom. You ever heard of trichinosis? You ever heard of mad cow disease? They cross the species barrier. Now, we do have some protection. About half of them can't get through, but 100 can. I have enough disease in my kingdom. I don't want to borrow 100 more from the animal kingdom, thank you. They can keep their diseases. And the way I get the disease from the animal kingdom is by eating him or living too close to him. I can get 100 communicable diseases. So you have to decide if it's worth it or not. 100 diseases. That's too much for me. Dr. Kellogg, who Bill Clinton had mentioned, excuse me, Dr. Kellogg, Dr. T. Colin Campbell, he's the nutritional biochemist at Cornell University. He wrote the China study. That was the largest medical study done in the history of medicine, and I wish we had time to show you that video. It might be on YouTube, I don't know. But the China study, they were trying to figure out why the Chinese didn't have the Western diseases. And it was a multi-million-dollar study that was conducted by Cornell University and Oxford University. And Dr. Campbell, who's nutritional biochemist at Cornell, was in charge. And they said there were some minor factors involved, but the major factor was in China, their animal protein intake is 10% of their diet. So 90% of their protein is what? Plant. In the United States, it's 7 times more animal. 70% of our diet, protein intake, is animal. 70%. We're only getting 30% from the plant kingdom. And with that 70%, guess what? We got 100 more diseases. And it shows. So Dr. Campbell was asked to speak to a room full of cardiologists, heart doctors. They said, Dr. Campbell, please tell us what we can do for our heart patients. And he told them in one quick paragraph what to do. This is what he said, quote, why must we be reticent or reluctant about recommending a diet which we know is safe and healthy? We as scientists can no longer take the attitude that the public cannot benefit from information they're not ready for. Do you know why you're not ready for the truth? Because you've been listening to advertising too long. You've been propagandized so long, you wouldn't know the truth if you saw it. Because you say, well, that's not true. That's not what the ads say. We must have the integrity to tell the public the truth and let them decide what to do with it. We can't force them to follow our guidelines, but we can at least give them these guidelines and let them decide. Thank you. We must tell the public that a diet of fruits, stems, seeds, flowers, fruits, leaves is the healthiest diet and the only diet we can promote, endorse, and recommend. Now this comes from the nutritional biochemist at Cornell University. He is Professor Emeritus at Cornell University. When he walks into the room, the other doctors go, yes. He knows what he's talking about. Now, the National Academy of Sciences and the World Health Organization at the United Nations decided to come up with a guideline to improve world health. And so they got together their team of scientists, and they came up with these guidelines. This is for the whole planet, not just a country or a population group. This is for the whole planet. And here is their recommendation. Lower your salt intake, avoid alcohol, reduce fat and cholesterol, exercise to get the proper weight, have a moderate amount of protein. Most Americans eat 200% more protein than their body can handle. You see, you are not a protein machine, you are a complex carbohydrate machine. The problem that carbohydrates got a bad rap is what they're talking about as bad is refined carbohydrates. No, those don't help you. But complex carbohydrates are critical. But they just throw out the one word carbohydrate and they say bad. That's not correct. Refined carbohydrates, yes. Complex, critical. You need to have these. You are a complex carbohydrate machine. That's what you run on. There is no question about that. Then they also want you to have at least 8 servings a day of green leafy vegetables, fruits, especially citrus fruits, whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds. Nowhere in this list of recommendation was meat and dairy products. Did they forget something? Did they miss? No, they didn't. They're trying to improve world health. And the improvement is to go to a plant-based diet. No meat, no dairy. This is the National Academy of Sciences and the World Health Organization at the United Nations. Their recommendation. Wow. I'm watching my time. I'm already after 8 o'clock. So we're going to move on here a little bit. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Department wanted to find out what happened to the insecticide PCB. Do you remember we used to spray that in this country? And they realized finally how dangerous it was and they banned it. And by the way, I've been to countries that still use it. It's a problem. But the scientists said PCB doesn't go away. It has what we call a long shelf life or a long half-life, and it doesn't go away. So they said, where did it go? We need to find out where it is so that we can alert the public and they can be safer. So what they decided to do is study birds, because birds have different diets. Some birds eat at the bottom of the food chain, and some birds eat at the top of the food chain. Do you understand what the food chain is? At the bottom are the vegetables, next up are the insects, then small rodents, then larger ones, and then the top of the food chain is the carnivore, where some humans like to think they are. I'm a carnivore. I'm at the top of the food chain. Well, I wouldn't brag about that. That's not a good place to be. Because we have a new word out that wasn't existent when I was in college. It's called bioaccumulation. Bioaccumulation means that if there's any contamination at the bottom of the food chain, it gets intensified and stronger as it works its way up into the flesh of higher animals. Stronger and stronger and stronger. So, they started at the bottom of the food chain. They studied birds that ate primarily berries, nuts, and seeds. I have a feeling that went blank on me. Well, I can tell you this. You just have to imagine the numbers. When they studied the birds, what they do is they open up their liver. Because if you want to find out if there's any toxicity in an animal, you look in their liver, because it's the detoxifying organ of the animal. So they wanted to find out if the PCB was there. And when they opened up their liver, the PCB was 0.2. They said, terrific. It's not in the bottom of the food chain. It's virtually gone. So then they moved up to the food chain to birds that ate worms and insects. Now, worms and insects eat the vegetation all their life, don't they? So it's concentrated in their little bodies. So when they open up the liver of the birds that ate worms and insects, the PCB concentration tripled to 0.65. And they said, oh, we're getting warmer. Then they moved up to the food chain, the birds that ate mice and snakes and other rodents. We're going up the food chain, aren't we? And when they open up the liver of these birds, it jumped to 50. And they said, now we're getting really close. So they went to both the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans, and they studied birds that ate seafood and fish. And when they opened up the liver of these birds, it jumped to, are we ready? Okay. Good. We're just in time for the big number. When they opened up the liver that ate seafood and fish, the PCB concentration in their liver was 900. We found it. We found it. It washed off the plants, went into the water table, and out to the ocean. I used to eat kelp. I used to eat what they call sea lettuce because it's extremely dark green, very high in iron. But after this, I'm done. I don't eat anything that comes out of that ocean. I have friends from Hawaii who call me almost every week. Do you know Fukushima is still leaking radioactive? It hasn't been sealed up. That radioatomic waste is still, and the first point of entry to the United States is Hawaii. And they're pulling fish out that are extremely deformed in the ocean. We don't hear about it here, and the press isn't going to tell you, because probably the fish industry said, you be quiet, here's another million. Be quiet, here's another million. But the Hawaiians are going crazy. Yeah. They haven't plugged up Fukushima. And you know what happens, of course, once it hits Hawaii, those ocean currents are going to take it all over the world. Now, I taught the Eskimos above the Arctic Circle in Kotzebue, Alaska. The Eskimos in Kotzebue told me our fish have mercury poisoning. And I said, get out of here. You're above the Arctic Circle. How did your fish get mercury poisoning? They said the acid rain from Russia came over the Bering Straits and contaminated our rivers, our lakes, and our streams. I was in Fiji lecturing. At the end of my lecture, a man from the government stood up in the audience and he said, people, you better listen to what this guy says because he's done his homework. I can tell you, the fish we have here in Fiji not only have mercury, but it has lead poisoning in it. Now, have you ever seen where Fiji is? It's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. There are no neighbors. Where did they get the mercury and the lead? And the guy from the government explained, fish, like birds, migrate. And when they migrate, if they go by a country where there is a dictator or a communist leader, there are no rules, no regulations. They throw out waste, they throw out atomic stuff. Who cares? They don't. Goes into the air, goes into in the water, the birds pick it up, and the fish pick it up. And they migrate all over the world. So I don't care if you live above the Arctic Circle or in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, you're not safe. There's no Camelot on this planet anymore. Mother Earth is dying. That's why I know Jesus has to come soon. She cannot support life on this planet anymore. Our water system used to evaporate and rain and clean everything. You know what the rain is doing now? It's contaminating everything. It's called acid rain. And that's been around since the 60s that I'm aware of. So the Earth's ecosystem is not cleaning it and refreshing it. It's spreading the contamination. And it's getting worse. It's not every country I go to. When I speak at a university, I ask to speak to someone in the agriculture department. I ask to speak to somebody in the oceanography department, air control. All of them have the same message. I've been on 5 continents now. They all have the same message. We're running out. We are running out. The soil is so depleted, we can't grow things. The air is so dangerous that we have to filter it. The water is so polluted that we have to strain it. How can this earth stay much longer? You know, if mom dies, so do you. Mother Earth cannot support us anymore. She's dying herself. How could she support us? All right, let's find out what the Bible has to say. The original diet given to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden was a fruitarian diet. Genesis 1:29. Nothing died in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve only ate the fruit of the plant. The plant stayed alive. But after sin and sickness came into the world, God added the medicinal quality of the herbs and the vegetables. That's Genesis 3:18. Never again does God say, this is what I want you to eat. These are the only 2 verses in all of Scripture where God says, this is what I want you to eat. Now, I know what you're thinking of, the flood, and I'm with you. After the vegetation was wiped out, God said, I'm going to give you permission now. Is this what he wanted? No, this is not what he wanted. He says, I'm going to give you permission, and because this is not what I want, I'm going to have to now put restrictions on this. With the fruits and vegetables, any and all you want. But because this is not what I want, I'm putting restrictions on this one because we're going into an area that's not safe. So he said, I put some animals on this earth to clean up after you. They're living garbage cans. They're in the air, they're on the ground, and they're in the ocean. Stay out of the garbage cans, right? That's why they're unclean, because they clean up after us. They have a good function. They do a good job, but they're not supposed to be on our dinner table. Then God said of the clean animals, before you are allowed to eat them, to make them safer and to lower the cholesterol in them, I want you to remove 2 things from the clean animal before you eat them. This you must do if you're going to follow me. What 2 things did God say had to be removed from the meat before they were allowed to eat it? The blood and the fat. We know this, don't we? And yet every meat eater that I know, from conference presidents on down, all 100% eat the fat and the blood. Can you claim to follow what God says and eat fat and blood? No, you can't. When I go to Russia, the division president is a vegetarian, but all of his pastors are meat eaters. And whenever I come over there, he pulls his pastors together. And he says, Paul, I want you to tell them everything and don't hold back. Now, I'm not going to tell you the things I told the pastors because that's just for them. But he will stand in the back, this president, and he'll go, yep. And he goes, and Paul, don't forget to tell them. And Paul, remember what Ellen White said? You know, I said, yes, I got it. I'm getting to it, you know. He goes, yep. And these pastors start getting real antsy and real wormy. Leviticus chapter 17, Deuteronomy chapter 12, Genesis chapter 9, clear. no fat, and no blood. And in fact, Genesis 9 says, if you eat the blood of an animal, I will require your life. That's pretty clear. And today, we know that's sound medical advice. The disease is in the blood. Leukemia cells, cancer cells, where does it travel? In the blood. That's where it's at. So God said, you eat the blood, your life's going to be required. Yeah. Can you buy this meat today? You have to go to a kosher Jewish deli, and you can buy biblical meat. This is the only meat, as a Christian, that I would be allowed to eat. Now, I've lectured in New York and Connecticut, and I've talked to some Hasidic Jews. You can spot them. They got the curly hair here, and they got the yarmulke on top. And I said, have you ever eaten kosher meat? And they said, oh, yeah. I said, what's it like? You don't want seconds. I said, why not? They said, it's like eating a gray rubber band because the salty urine has been removed. The rich fat is gone. The succulent blood is missing. And it's like a tough, chewy, gray rubber band, which is exactly what God had in mind, wasn't it? He did not want you desiring this food. Noah couldn't plant those seeds fast enough after the flood because he wanted to eat full flavor food, not meat without fat and blood. But the golden arches showed up, and we've been eating fat and blood ever since, haven't we? Yes. So let me ask you a question. Why did God give us the animals? What are they for? We've been eating them so long we forgot, huh? They were to be our servants and to be our companions. That was their two functions. Now, if you go around eating your servants, are you going to have any servants left? No. I've been to countries that eat dog and cat. My dad said the black-haired dogs taste the best. And I guess different dogs would taste different, like fish taste different, right? I mean, a Cocker Spaniel should taste different than a St. Bernard, just like a salmon tastes different than a trout. Dad says, black-haired dog, that's what you want. And we think, how could you do that? What matters if it's a cow or a chicken or a fish? It's a creature that has family and that God created to be our companion and to be our servants. When I was lecturing in New York, I better tell this one real quickly. They asked me, they said, do you know about lobster fishing? And I said, no, I live in Alaska. We don't have lobster up there. And they said, well, during lobster season, you can't get it all the time, but it starts out at a season. And when lobster season's coming up, the boats line up 2 weeks before it starts because the boats in the front are going to get the most lobster. They'll pay a full crew to sit there and knit while they're waiting for the gun to go off for the lobster. And they sit there for 2 weeks waiting, and the gun goes pow, and the boats take off. And I said, okay. You know where they go? No. The sewer pipes of New York. That raw sewage is what the lobster likes. So they're a perfect recycler. You realize if you eat a lobster, you may eat what you ate 3 days ago again in the lobster. Think about that next time you eat shrimp or crab or lobster. I'm not going to continue the recycling. I'm going to stop it right there. All right, we got to keep moving here. What about dairy products? Man, is this guy going to leave nothing alone? Remember, I'm telling you this because I love you, all right? Now, if you're a baby doctor, a pediatrician in the United States, you know who this man is. He's very famous. Dr. Oski was the former director of pediatrics at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, and he was the physician-in-chief at Johns Hopkins Children's Center. He's responsible for 19 medical textbooks. He's published over 260 medical manuscripts. They're in the best medical research centers around the world. His books are on hematology and pediatrics. Hematology is blood, pediatrics is children. And one of the books he's responsible for writing is called Don't Drink Your Milk. Now, I forgot to bring the book down here with me, but I can remember mostly what he says. In the last 3 sentences of the book, he says, cow milk has no valid claim as the perfect food. Who told you cow's milk was the perfect food? The dairy industry. Okay, they have a vested interest, don't they? He said cow milk produces allergies, diseases in the children, stomach cramps, and other diseases in the older child, and is a factor in the development of heart attacks and strokes. Then he closes by saying, perhaps when the public is educated as to the hazards of milk, you see, when you listen to the milk ad, are you being educated? No, you're being propagandized. You're being sold a bill of goods. You're not being educated. Advertisements are not education. They're propaganda. So, what's wrong with cow's milk? Nothing for a baby calf, but for a baby human, it's a problem. Because cow's milk has 3 times more sodium, 3 times more calcium, 3 times more protein than mother's milk. That's right. This stuff is rocket fuel. It was designed by God for a newborn calf that weighs 50 pounds. His first year of growth, he's going to be 10 times bigger, over 500 pounds. It needs a strong formula to be 500 pounds in 1 year. Unless you're planning on your baby weighing 500 pounds, you need to give it the right formula. And it is not cow's milk. You would be better off eating dog milk or cat milk. And you go, whew. What's the difference? You're getting milk from an animal. That cow doesn't look anything like you. It's not anywhere near your size. A full-grown cow is over 2,000 pounds. That formula is not for you. It's for a 4-legged animal that goes moo. So you say, okay, where are you going to get your calcium? You know who promoted all that, don't you? The Dairy Council. You need your calcium. Come to mama. You got a nurse off of our babies. Well, take a look at any nutrition chart, and you can get them. Wait, do I have that next? Let me see. There it is. Go to any library, get a nutritional chart for calcium, and you'll find out where calcium is. It's everywhere. It's in vegetables, it's in beans, it's in fruit. It's everywhere. If you have enough food to eat, you have enough calcium. So let me ask you a simple question. What animals that walk this planet have the biggest bones and would need the most calcium to support those bones? Yeah, think Africa. Elephant, rhinoceros, hippopotamus, giraffes. Huge bones. Do they drink milk? No, they don't. Where are they getting all that calcium? Plants. Now, if there is enough calcium in plants for an elephant leg this big, do you think there's enough for these little legs? There's no question. It's in the plants. We know that mustard greens, collard greens, turnip greens, spinach have twice as much calcium, cup for cup, as milk. Twice the calcium, with no cholesterol, with no animal disease. You see, I can't get a disease from a plant because I don't have roots to rot. I don't have leaves to fall out. So I can't get a plant disease. But an animal disease, I have liver, I have kidney, I have stomach, I have lungs, I have arteries. Yeah, I can get their diseases because I have the same system. But it's different, and therefore it has to be treated a little differently. You might want to be careful about your vitamin B12. There are several sources of B12. You can decide what you're more comfortable with. On the back of your tongue overnight while you sleep, that bacteria back there forms B12. You brush your tongue when you first get up in the morning, before you eat, brush your tongue, let that bacteria, or excuse me, let the B12 go down. After breakfast, you can use toothpaste, but not before. Toothpaste will destroy B12. Toothpaste is too harsh, and B12 is a very delicate vitamin. So it forms on the back of your tongue. Just brush and swallow. You got B12. Some of the foods that you'll be buying, when you buy some of these soy milks and almond milks and veggie burgers and garden burgers, they add B12 to them because these companies realize you're going away from the animal sources, so they put B12 in them. If you have a high-fiber diet, which a vegetarian does, in your descending colon, a high-fiber diet will make the stool up high enough so that the receptors for B12 can extrapolate the B12. That's only on a high-fiber diet. And then, of course, the other source is B12 tablets. If you take B12 tablets, in order to be absorbed in your body, It has to be sublingual. If the bottle says to swallow it, it's not going to work. Your stomach acids will destroy it. I don't know how those people keep selling those. People should know that you can't swallow B12. It has to be sublingual, under the tongue. There's two kinds of B12. There's cyanocobalamin and methylcobalamin. The one that works best is methylcobalamin. That's the one you want. Methylcobalamin under your tongue. It dissolves in about a minute, and that will provide you your B12. If you're not sure about your B12, you can have it tested. If you're not getting any B12, it doesn't disappear overnight. It takes a long time for B12 to completely disappear. So if you suddenly stopped having B12 next year, you would take a test, they would say, your B12 has dropped. They're not going to say it's gone, because it's not going to go away in 1 year. So take an annual. You have to pay extra for B12. They don't normally test for B12. You also have to pay extra for vitamin D. They don't normally test, which makes no sense because they know most Americans are vitamin D deficient. You would think the vitamin D people would supplement the blood test so that people would know they have to take vitamin D supplements. If I was in the business, that's exactly what I would do. I'd say, hey, you, what do they call those guys that draw blood? Phlebotomists. I thought it was vampires. Okay. Anyway, I would give them money. I would say, here, I'll pay the B12 or the D. You let them know they're out and they got to come and get my product. That's business. But we don't do it. So the first food pyramid that got away from the 4 squares, do you remember those 4 squares? I wished, when I was started teaching 30 years ago, that was hanging in the classrooms. I wished I would have grabbed one of those because I did look at them. And in the bottom corner, it says brought to you by the American Dairy Council or the Meat Packers Association. This was a poster they put in the public school. That is against the law. You're not allowed to put advertising posters in a public education setting. But guess what? They paid the money, and the school said, oh, we'd like nice color posters of your product. What are we doing? I don't care, you have posters for cigarettes. How come we don't have posters for, you know? Anyway, this was the first one that was developed. It was the first step in the right direction. Oh, it was controversial. Doctors were yelling and hammering their feet, you know. That's because they were being paid by the Meat and Dairy Council. This was not sponsored by the Meat and Dairy Council. This was sponsored by Dr. Neil Barnard, who's a professor at George Washington University. He formed what's called the Physicians for Responsible Medicine. 3,000 doctors volunteered to serve on this committee, and this is what these 3,000 doctors came up with. So it starts out at the bottom. Does this have a pointer? Oh, yeah, but it doesn't work on that. That's right. You can see what the bottom is. It's the fruits, nuts, grains, and vegetables. Then over on the left, they say dairy, trying to help people make a transition. You can't give them too much too quick, or they won't swallow it. But dairy, you know what they're asking for, calcium. And I already told you what the calcium was. We know it from the food charts. On the right-hand side, they're looking for meat, nuts, and eggs, which is a protein. And, of course, the champion is the nuts, okay? Whenever you put beans and grains together, you get all 22 amino acids, everything the body needs. Anytime you put beans and grains together. And do you know most of the world does this without even realizing it? You know what they eat in India? Dal and lentils. Dal is a bean, and they eat dal and lentils and rice. Guess what they eat in the Orient? Soybeans and rice. South America, beans and corn. What are all those? Beans and grains. Most of the world eats beans and grains. It's really true. Only the wealthy countries eat the heavy meat and dairy products. And they're the ones who have the biggest hospitals and the most heart attacks and the most strokes and all the other health problems that come with that. Of course, at the very top of the pyramid is the food and the sugar, the oil and the sugar. But a lot of people have taken that and they've moved it down to the bottom, and they're eating a lot more oil and sugar than they should be eating. So we don't want to do that. We want to keep the pyramid in perspective. I do need to get they have a vegan pyramid, but I haven't found somebody to photograph it and work it into my PowerPoint, but that's coming up to see the new food pyramid. But this was the first one that came out, and it was a real ground shaker. Boy, I just really woke up everyone. The nutritionist said, this is heresy. This is not true. You got to eat from the 4 food groups. No. You need to eat from these 4 food groups. There's still 4 food groups, fruits, nuts, grains, and vegetables. And I think most of my Adventist brothers and sisters have a 5th one, fruits, nuts, grains, and vegetables, and dessert. We're having no trouble in that area, the 5th food group. All right. Half a cup of beans a day is what you need with any grain. If you've got a half a cup of beans with any grain, the two most nutritious beans are soybeans and garbanzo, or chickpeas. Those are the most nutritious beans. But any bean is great. You even use string beans and peas. They're beans. So don't think you have to boil something for an hour. No, peas and string beans are working too. They're beans. They'll work. Peanuts are not a nut. They're a bean. They do not provide the nutritional value of a nut. Nuts grow in trees. Peanuts don't grow in trees. They grow in bushes. Ask Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter will tell you there's beans. There's not nuts. So, of course, organic is always the safest and the freshest to have, the most nutritious. Frozen is the next most nutritious, and then canned is the least. It doesn't mean there isn't anything in canned, but it's just a little lower. Fresh is best, then frozen, then canned. And be careful with that canned. Very few ingredients, please. Again, if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it, because if you can't pronounce it, Chauvidon has probably been in that can. You saw them earlier, don't you? Yeah. We want you addicted to our food. They asked later on in the interview, 60 Minutes asked them, so what companies in America do you work for? And they said, trade secret. We're not going to tell you who we're loading up. But I have suspicion it's the big companies who can afford them, like Hunt Wesson Food, like M&M Corporation, and Pringles, and a few other companies that have you addicted to their food. So he was right. Addiction. Spicy foods you need to be careful of. I spent 3 months in Mexico. This was not a popular topic. But I said, listen, you guys, if it burns your tongue, it's going to burn your tummy. That's all you need to know. Just do the experiment. What about this? What about this? I said, put it on your tongue. Leave it there for 1 minute. If your tongue is sore, you think it's going to stop when you swallow? It's going to get sore down here. They've dropped fiber optic cameras, and they can see the blood vessels bursting and bleeding inside your intestinal tract from spicy foods. One of the worst is black pepper. Black pepper has an oil in it called eugenol oil. If you put black pepper on an open cut, how do you think it would feel? Horrible. It would burn. That eugenol oil is going to blister your tissue. That's what happens when you swallow. Vinegar, you'll try to stay away from. You'll notice on my recipes and the salad dressings, there was no vinegar. There was lemon, lime, or pineapple. Those are the three juices you should use. Vinegar will destroy the vitamin C in your body, and it will strip the mucus lining in your intestinal tract to prevent the food from moving through smoothly and safely. So vinegar doesn't belong inside the body. You can use it on the surface as an astringent or to clean your windows, but it's not intent. I know people are saying apple cider vinegar is okay. No, it's not. Once you say vinegar, the process that has occurred is called fermentation. You are not to eat fermented foods. What did they offer Jesus on the cross? When wine goes bad, what does it turn to? Vinegar. Bad wine is vinegar. It's been aged too long. So it's a fermentation beyond alcohol. So keep that in mind. I don't care if that vinegar comes from rice or it comes from apples or shoelaces. Once you say vinegar, we're done talking. It's fermented, and you don't eat fermented food. God said to eat fresh food as I grew it. Don't be aging it, processing it, tearing it apart, rearranging it. God knows what he's doing. He is the best cook. Now, I think I mentioned to you this already. You get new taste buds every 30 days. I did tell you that, didn't I? Yeah. So give those taste buds some time. Some of these recipes, people tell me, you know, it's really not that wonderful. And I said, tell me in another month what it tastes like. Don't judge it right now, because you still got bent taste buds. They're the bent key, and they're not unlocking the flavor that's in those recipes. You can't taste it because you're used to having your taste buds smacked with pepper and vinegar and spices. And when you taste something that's with mild herbs and natural foods, you kind of go, bleh, this is all vanilla. Yeah? You just keep at it. You'll be surprised at the explosion of flavor that's going to occur. And it will. It will. Give it time. When I was in Canada, I saw a store that I had to get a picture of with me in front of it because I couldn't believe they were telling the truth. Death by chocolate. This was in Canada. See, I'm guarding the door. I'm telling the people, read the sign. Read the sign. Chocolate has 19 poisons in it, one of which is theobromine, which goes directly to your nervous system, not to mention the caffeine. To give chocolate to a child is unconscionable because you see, male's brain does not fully develop until age 25. If you put anything in that system that's going to impede that development, that person will have to carry that the rest of their entire life. Why would you do that to a child? Now, the woman's brain kicks in about 22 or 23. We're a little later. So, guys, we got to hang in there a little longer. But if you do any messing around until that age, that brain is finished, for the next 30, 40 years, they got to live with it. That's called a life sentence. A life sentence. Just for some little bit of chocolate. Just for that monster drink. And by the way, you become a monster when you drink it. I'm ashamed to tell you, I've seen it sold in our Adventist hospitals. I took a photograph of it because I figured no one would believe me. Monster drink in our Seventh-day Adventist hospital. In that same hospital, I'm not going to tell you what it was at, it was Easter time. And guess what was in the lobby? Easter eggs and Easter bunnies. I asked to speak to the CEO of that hospital. They said, he's not here. And I said, then give me somebody in charge. How do you expect us evangelists to go and tell people that this is a pagan thing and you're selling it in our lobby? I said, you need to take one of those words off that sign in your hospital, Adventist. It doesn't belong there. We don't promote Easter eggs and Easter bunnies. But it was, and guess what else was in that hospital? You're not going to believe this, but I have the pictures to prove it. Starbucks was in our hospital. They had a booth in our hospital. I walked around the corner and I almost had to go to the emergency room. I said, STAR, 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 bucks. This is Starbucks and I'm in the Adventist hospital. And you know what they say about us, don't you? You bunch of phonies, you hypocrites. You tell us we can't get baptized until we give up our caffeine, our nicotine, and all these other alcohol. And you're selling it. You're selling it to us to make a profit in your hospitals. Sorry, got sidetracked. Got to get back on the topic. I'm telling you this so that you're not going to be shocked, because you are going to see it. You are going to see it. I've traveled enough, and I know, Pastor Joe, you have too. We could tell you horror stories all night, but that's not uplifting and getting the job done. I'm just giving you this as a heads up. More of it's going to be happening. So don't be overwhelmed. Don't go crazy like I almost did. I want the president of this hospital now. Wow. Monster drink, Starbucks, and Easter bunnies in an Adventist hospital. Please put Baptist hospital or Methodist hospital or Holy Blessed Virgin Mary hospital, but don't put Adventist hospital. Come on. If my parents would have walked in there, they would have been shocked. They'd have said, I thought you don't. How come? What is this? Every meat was served there except pig. Fish, chicken, and beef. I photographed it. Back on topic. Stop it. Okay. What can you do to help gain control? I'll tell you what I do every week that helps keep me control in my diet choices, and that's fasting. Whoops, we got the sugar thing. Did I miss that? Oh, here it is right here. Yep. All right. We'll do sugar real quick here. I got 15 minutes. Sugar. There's basically two kinds of sugar you're going to eat. You're going to eat the refined processed sugar that man makes. That's the white sugar. The whiter the sugar, you know you're in trouble. Or you're going to eat the natural sugar that God made. That's called a fructose monosaccharide sugar. Now this disaccharide that man made, that creates problems. Because they've taken 6 feet of sugar cane and put it into a spoon, a pharmacist will tell you that white sugar is no longer listed as a food. It is listed pharmacologically as a drug. Because when you take 6 feet and you turn it into a spoon, it's a drug. What do you think drugs are? They're refined plants. That's what drugs are. They're highly refined. And so they're called drugs now. They may have come from a different plant, but it's now a drug because it's so concentrated. So this sucrose disaccharide, when it gets into your body, it's the end of your meal, you have some cake or you have some ice cream or something like that. That disaccharide, because the fiber has been removed and it's refined, It shoots right into the body, and it gives you that drug kick. That's what you like. That's why you feel so happy clappy when you eat a candy bar or when you drink a Coca-Cola. Ah, whew, yes, yeah, you can feel that. And it's a drug high. It's exactly what it is. But because there's no fiber, it burns very quickly. And what goes up must go down. And it's down here at the bottom that your white blood cells are almost paralyzed. They can't function, which is one of the lines in your immune system to keep you healthy, your white blood cells. But they don't work when there's disaccharide sugars in there. Ask any elementary school teacher when the highest absenteeism during the entire school year is. It's the week after Halloween. Those kids didn't get treated. They got tricked. They got that disaccharide sugar. Then your body has to crawl back up to get back to normal. This is called spiking in the body. This body does not like spiking. The body wants to stay copacetic. It wants regular heartbeat, regular circulation, regular breathing. It wants everything running on a timetable, very regular. This is not regular. This is spiking. And the body goes into panic mode when this happens. The monosaccharide sugar that God gave us, fructose monosaccharide, is what we do when we eat apples, oranges, and grapes, you know. And you get that little happy bump. You know, when you eat a banana or have an orange, you go, this is really nice. Yeah, well, it's a natural sugar. God wanted you to enjoy it, but he didn't want you going crazy on it. He just wanted the happy bump. And so when you have that happy bump, body doesn't panic. All right, fasting. This is where I was trying to get to. I fast once a week, from Friday afternoon to Sabbath afternoon, 24 hours. I have nothing but water. You know what that does? That puts my brain in power over my tongue. That's why fasting is so critical to help you maintain. Now, if you're hypoglycemic or diabetic, you may have to consult with your doctor, but I highly recommend it. If you've never fasted before, you have to be careful because you could become very sick. Because when you fast, there's no food to process, right? Well, inside, the body likes to stay busy. They said, well, there's no food. Let's lift up the carpet and see what's under there. Woo! Yeah, all this stuff that's been stored. So, if you get sick during the fast, stop immediately and eat something. The body will stop cleaning. Because it says, oh, we got food to process. Put the carpet back down. Let's get back to processing food. So, you may want to try a fruit fast for the first time, just to ease into it. While you're doing any kind of a fasting or cleansing, up your water to 12 to 15 glasses. So you've got plenty of fluid to flush the garbage out that's coming out from under that carpet. You understand what I mean by under the carpet? Okay, the body has been storing some of this stuff because it can't handle it. Well, it'll go back looking for it if it's got time and the energy to do it. And when no food comes in, guess what? The body has time and energy, and it'll start cleaning. So you may want to try a juice fast. That's another step in the right direction. You're not drinking juice all day. You're drinking it at mealtime. That's your meal, is juices. You can drink 4 or 5 glasses, but then stop and then continue to drink the water. Eventually, you'd like to get to the point where you're having a water fast. We find fasting throughout the Bible all the time. And I got convicted reading Spirit of Prophecy. She says eating 2 meals instead of 3 meals is a type of fast. You are fasting 1 meal from the normal public. So she said 2 meals a day is a type of fast. But I want to do a 24-hour one. And I've been doing that almost since I've been an Adventist, 44 years. It's just so natural to me. It doesn't bother me to skip breakfast Saturday morning. My mind is sharper and clearer for church, and so I just skip it. But if that's not a good day, pick Tuesday or Thursday, whatever day is good for you. But try to do a 24-hour fast once a week. It empowers the brain over the body. Then you have to take a look and say, well, if I do this, am I really going to be strong and healthy? And the answer is unequivocally yes. Let's take a look at some athletes that have set world records. They are on a plant-based diet. Sixto Linares competed in the double Ironman, and yet he's a vegetarian. Paavo Nurme, this guy's from Norway. He's known as the Flying Finn. He's the only man to this day in Olympic history who medaled in the 1 mile, 5,000, and 10,000 meter. Nobody to this day has been able to do all 3. Can't do it. But this guy from Finland did it decades ago on a plant-based diet. Bill Pearl, Mr. Universe 4 times. I actually stopped by his place. He lives outside of Portland. I stopped by to talk to him, but he was gone, probably lecturing somewhere. 4 times Mr. Universe. Obviously, this guy needs some meat because he's too scrawny. Isn't that right? Yeah, he's a vegetarian. Now, Marine Captain Alan Jones is all over the Guinness World Book of Records. We don't have time to go into it right now. but he's a vegetarian. How many have heard of the Ironman competition held once a year on the Big Island of Hawaii? I actually have a photograph at the hotel where it starts on the Big Island. And the first man to win Ironman 6 times is Dave Scott. And they said, Dave, how did you win Ironman 6 times? And he said, I'm a vegetarian. They said, yeah, but how did you do it? And he said, I'm a vegetarian. You see, the meathead couldn't get it. Well, Mark Allen was listening to Dave Scott say he won Ironman 6 times because he's a vegetarian. So Mark Allen became a vegetarian. And you can see here on the bottom picture, Dave Scott and Mark Allen running together in the Ironman. Mark Allen was the second man to win Ironman 6 times as a vegetarian. So these two men have won Ironman 12 times on a plant-based diet. Wow. I was lecturing in Oregon, and I heard about something called the World Senior Games. And I said, what's the World Senior Games? They said, it's just like the Olympics, except you have to be 50 years or older to participate. And I said, really? I said, where's it going to be held this year? They said, St. George, Utah. I said, well, I want to go check out this prune race, see what's going on. I figured it would just be, a couple of dozen people there to be gathered around. I thought maybe I could give a lecture or make a presentation or encourage them or something like that. Oh, this is not a tiny event. I was surprised when I got there. There were 23,000 spectators in the stadium cheering on their favorite countries and their favorite athletes. There I am with what's called the Royal Court of the Senior Games. I got to know these ladies. And then they had marching bands. There were celebrities there. And Joe Namath, I got a picture of Joe Namath while I was there. Some of you may not even know who he is, but back in the day. And Helen Reddy was there. A lot of the celebrities who were over 50 years old, they come to see these athletes. You see, some of these athletes were Olympic athletes when they were in their 20s. So now they're coming back to the Senior Games to gather some more medals. And here at the top is called the Parade of Nations. The different flags go by, Argentina goes by, the Argentinians jump up. Norway goes by, the Norwegians go up, The British flag goes by, the British go, yes. Not too much enthusiasm there. This is the official jacket of the World Senior Games. Over 40 countries participate in this event from all over the world. And about 1,400 athletes are represented by these 40 different countries. And I got so excited, I wanted to play. And they said, well, did you train? And I said, well, no, but you guys are eating pancakes and sausage, and I think I can whoop you. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, your red blood cells that are carrying oxygen, when your diet is 67% fat, which most Americans are, these red blood cells don't carry oxygen, they stick together. And if they stick together, they can't carry oxygen, which means your athletes have a 20% drop in their oxygen for the next day, day and a half. And if they have a 20% drop in their oxygen, I can beat them. And they said, well, registration's closed. I said, no, you have late registration. That's another $150 on top of registration. I said, okay. They said, Mr. Volk, you're throwing your money away. All you're going to do is get disqualified. You didn't train for this. I said, oh, yes, I trained at the dinner table. So a friend of mine there was with me, and I know you can't see this too well, but there's the lineup. I entered 2 races, the 5-kilometer race and the 1,500-meter race. And there I am in the center, in the red, in the lineup. And those athletes, they were funny. They were kind of looking at me. I mean, here I had these street tennis shoes on. They got these $500 flashing self-propelled jetpack tennis shoes on, and they're kind of looking at me like, where did you come from, And I just said, you just take a good look at this, because that's all you're going to see when that gun goes off. Your pancakes and sausage are going to be back there. So I entered the 2 races. There's my number 159. And in both races, the 5-kilometer, 1,500-meter races, I was a silver medalist. Now, the judges could not believe it. They said, Mr. Volk, you walked in off the street just to watch, and you're number 2 in the world. How did you do that? I said, I'm a vegan. And they said, yeah, but how did you do it? I'm going, oh, you meathead, you won't get it. They said, if you train and you come back, you're going to take away all of our gold medals. And I said, I don't need to come back anymore. I proved to you that a vegan can walk in off the street and take on your 1,400 athletes from 40 different countries. Now, when I was in the race, I was praying and talking to God. And I said, God, if you will give me a medal, I will use these medals to get into the high schools. And do you know, that's my golden key. I don't talk to the principal anymore. He takes too long. I call the football coach and the basketball coach. They have both money and power. And when I tell them I'm a silver medalist in the 5K and 1,500 meter race, the next thing they say is, when can you get here? And then I talk to them about drugs and alcohol. I also bring my steps to Christ. There are several clever ways of getting steps to Christ. Sometimes I have to keep it in the box, and I do not pass it out, but they can come up and reach in the box and take it out. Sometimes I have to park across the street, and they follow me to the trunk of my car, and I give it to them then. And these kids are asking for 3 and 4 copies for their brother, their sister, their uncle, their mom, their dad. Yeah, it works. What's that entering wedge we were told? The health message. The entering wedge. Yeah. There we go. The thing that got my attention most, and I got 5 minutes, boop, 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 gotta hurry. Things that got my attention the most was the testing room. It was a gymnasium. And they had little booths all along the wall and 2 rows in the center. And one booth was to test for glaucoma. Another was to test for bone density. Another was to test for diabetes. They had all these little tests. And the athletes get them for free. We don't have to pay for any of them. So I knocked out all the tests, did really great. But they had a new machine that year. Just came out, just for me. It cost $7 million to develop this machine. And it looks like a projector, just like that. It's called a bioscan. And the way it works is you put your hand over the lens and a blue laser light goes into your skin and it gathers data from your skin. This is more accurate than a blood test because a blood test is only going to be showing what happened in the last 48 hours. In your skin is months of information, months worth in the skin. So in this bioscan, if you score under 10,000, you have what's called a weak antioxidant defense. In other words, your immune system is shot. You need to see a doctor immediately. You're anemic. If you score 10 to 17,000, that's marginal. If you score 17 to 25, that's average. You know what average means? You're going to get 3 or 4 colds, flus, or viruses throughout the year. It's average. But if you score over 25,000, that's optimal. You're good to go. My score, you see in the upper right, was 34,000. They said, we have to ask you a question. What's that? Are you a vegetarian? No, I'm a vegan. And they said, we knew it. And I said, how did you know that? They said, because we've given these already to thousands of people, and only the vegetarians can break the 25,000 barrier. Now, 4 years later, I was visiting a couple in California who were at my seminar, invited me over to their house, which looked like a Hilton hotel. I mean, you were greeted with a waterfall in this house. And they had a yacht in the backyard. And they had one of these bioscans. And they said, Paul, have you done anything different in the last 4 years when you first took the test? And I said, yeah, I've been doing a couple of things different because I'm always improving and learning. I'm going to be doing some new things when I get back home in Anchorage. They said, what did you do different in the last 4 years? I said, I'm eating more organic, and my diet is over 50% raw and more organic. They said, you want to take the test again to see if it's helping? I said, well, sure, let's find out. So they gave me the test, and it comes out now with a nice new full-color report that they have. If you're in the red zone, that's low, you're anemic, get to the doctor. If you're in the blue zone, that's very good. And I said, what was my score? And they said, we don't really know. And I said, what do you mean you don't know? And they said, and you can see it here, maybe not from where you're sitting, but the machine only goes up to 59,000. And I went off the machine. They said, your immune system is so high, we can't even measure it. We never thought anybody could get past 59,000. That's where it stops. And I was so excited to hear that because you see, in the last days, in the time of trouble, when people are getting sick and they're falling down, somebody has to be there to pick them up and to help them. And if I'm sick, they're going to have to pick me up. But if my immune system is in place, I'm going to be able to march forward for the kingdom of heaven and help those people in the crisis time of that loud cry and the finishing of the work. So I was thrilled to find out When the mosquitoes take my blood, you better take off. They can beat up the hornets, the wasps, the bees. Yes. I'm telling you this because these silver medals and this immune system is not because of Paul Volk. It's because God's program really works, and I'm living proof. And so are others who are doing the same thing. There are many of us out there that are doing this. I run into them all the time. We know where we're at. Few and far between, but they're here, and we're doing our work, and we're getting the message out. Now, in closing, you may tell me, oh, can I do two things for closing? All right, I'll try to move quickly. When Ellen White said a statement that threw me off, it's either Adventist home or child guidance. She said, many parents have prepared their children to be drunkards at the dinner table. And I said, no, she meant the nightclub. That's what prepares you to be a drunkard. Or the bar. That's what prepares you to be a drunkard. She said, no, it was the dinner table. Food low in nutrition and high stimulation will prepare you to be a drunkard. And we have found this out over and over again. There's an Adventist prison that used to be in California called Maranatha. How many of you have heard of it? Terry Moran owned the business. He's a multimillionaire. Has a private airplane because my friend is his pilot. Terry bought this prison. He got permission from the state of California to serve vegan meals at this prison as an experiment. Vegan meals, Bible studies every day. They had to drink plenty of water. There was nothing else to drink. Nothing else to drink but water. And they had to exercise every day in the yard. And they kept careful records of all these prisoners. And this Maranatha prison, there's still some videos floating around that you can get. I've been to this prison visiting. And I spent a week there. And Terry Moreland, he gave me full run of the prison. He told the guard, he said, you open up anything Paul wants to see. And first thing I went to was the kitchen. I looked under every cupboard. That kitchen was as clean as mine. No vinegar, no irritating spices, no highly refined processed foods, no animal, no dairy products. Slick clean. These guys were getting the right treatment. Terry was firm on this. And what they found out was after a number of years of following up, 75% of these inmates never went back to prison again. That is unheard of in prison history. Normal population of prison, 75% go back. So there were warden and prison officials who were flying in from all over the world to see the Adventist prison and why they had a 75% success rate. Because prisons cost countries billions of dollars a year. Do you know how much it costs the United States to keep one inmate? $80,000. You could send him to Harvard for $80,000. But instead we lock him up, make bad fellowship, keep eating the same food, and then you go out and you do the same thing as you did when you came in. Guess what? You're coming back. You've got to do something different. And we teach these guys how to do something different. And they don't come back. You know what happened after about 10 years? There's a 2-year waiting list for prisoners begging to get into the Adventist prison so they can be finally set free. 2-year waiting list. They want in that prison because the word is out among the inmates. You want to get out and stay out? You go see the Adventists. They'll get you out and you'll stay out. What a witness. What a testimony. Now, they did the same experiment with laboratory rats. They took laboratory rats. And this is that statement from Ecclesiastes that matches Ellen White. It says, blessed are you, O land, whose king is of noble birth, whose princes eat at a proper time for strength and not for drunkenness. You eat for strength, not for drunkenness, which means you can eat for drunkenness, which is exactly what Ellen White said 150 years ago. You've prepared your children to be drunkards at the dinner table with your highly refined processed foods full of vinegar, spice, and all this other stuff. So they took these laboratory rats, they put them in a huge cage. One end of the cage was a beaker of water. At the other end of the cage, they added 10% alcohol, just a little bit, to the water. As soon as the hundreds of rats were released and they tasted the alcohol, they wouldn't go back. They wouldn't drink alcohol. They only drank the water. Then the experiment began. They removed what's called their normal laboratory rat chow, and they gave them the SAD diet. Do you know what that is? Standard American diet. See if you don't recognize some of this food. They ground it up, turned it into pellets to feed it to the rats. Hot dog with mustard and pickle relish, spaghetti, meatballs, green beans, a chopped salad. They had to put some greens in there or they would have died right away and the experiment would have finished. French bread, chocolate cake, candy bars, soda pop, coffee. What is this food? Low nutrition, which means the brain isn't getting what it needs to function. High stimulation, which means the nervous system is overpowered and in control. You're giving the nervous system power. In a short period of time, on this diet, all of the rats were drinking only alcohol. They didn't want water. Because once you push that stimulation diet through pornography or through food or through music, once you push that stimulation button, it wants more and stronger. And that's called addiction. All of the rats were on the alcohol. They continued the experiment. They removed the SAD diet, gave them their normal laboratory rat chow, and in a short period of time, to their amazement, most of the rats quit drinking the alcohol and went back to the water side. However, a number of the rats didn't make it back. They died, cirrhosis of the liver, alcoholism. And we wonder why our teenagers are getting pregnant, why they're sexually active, violent and aggressive, disrespectful, got ADD, XYZ. You better look at your dinner table. Because if you're not giving them brain food and instead stimulating their nervous system, you are raising a child heading for prison. That's where they go. That's where they go. I spoke at the highest maximum security prison in Europe. It's in Slovenia. They asked me to go there and to talk to the inmates. These men have a life sentence. They're not getting out. The only time they get out is when they die. And they're the most heinous murderers and rapists in all of Europe. They're sent to this prison to die. No more lawyers, no more appeals, no more courts. And when I was brought up to this prison, I was escorted by 6 machine gun guards. These 6 machine gun guards walked me into the auditorium. 3 of them flanked me on this side, 3 of them on this side. And they said, Mr. Volk, we're about to release the prisoners. We want you to know that if there's any disruption, all you do is lay down on the ground. Because anything that's standing up, we mow it down. Because you see, these guys are going to die here. We don't care if they die today or next year. They're dying here. They're not coming out. So we'll go ahead and kill them now. It doesn't matter. So he said, we're going to open up the doors. And as soon as they opened up the doors, their fingers went on the trigger. All 6 of them. And the guards and the prisoners saw that. They know they're dead if they create any kind of a mess or fuss. So they came in, and I'm telling you, these boys look bad. You would not want your sister going out with any one of these guys. And they sat down, looking at me. It's this scrawny little American. And then I started to talk. And within 1 hour, tears were coming down their face. And they came up to me and they said, Paul, if I could have met you when I was 10 years old, if I could have met you when I was 8 years old, I might not have lived the life that I did. Please get a hold of my brother. Get a hold of my cousin. They're coming down the same road and they're eating and drinking the same thing I did that got me here. It's too late for me, but they have a chance. I'm going to write all of them. Tell them what you told us. And I pray to God they'll believe us. It's true. It's true. So if you tell me, well, Paul, I'm not convicted on that. That's okay. We're not all convicted on everything as we need to be. You may say, I don't believe what you said about music. I don't believe what you said about the internet. Well, that's okay. You don't have to believe me. But if you tell me you're not convicted about wearing certain things, if you want to tell me you're not convicted about listening to certain tunes, I'm going to ask you 3 questions before I let you go. And after that, I'll let you guys go. You tell me, I'm not convicted on that. I'll say, okay. Well, listen, do you pray about it? Pray about it. I don't want to pray about it, because if I pray about it, I may have to change, and I don't want to change. Oh, I see. You don't want to pray about it. Well, listen, do you want to study about it? Show yourself approved unto God, a man rightly dividing the word of truth. Well, I don't want to learn the facts, because if I learn the facts, I may have to change, and I don't want to change. Well, listen, do you talk to others about it? La, 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 la. No, I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm not going to any seminars. You see how empty these rows are. I don't want to go to any seminars, because if I go to a seminar and listen to somebody talk, I may have to, and I don't want to. My friend, your problem isn't that you're not convicted. Your problem is you're not converted. Oh, it went away. That's okay, it was the last one. Your problem is you're not converted. That's the issue. Because you see, a converted person is going to pray about everything they eat, wear, watch, and listen to. They're going to study and know why this is good or why this is bad. And they're going to talk to others. I talk to anybody and everybody. Give me your load. I'll listen. I've talked to meat packers, federal meat inspectors. Every one of them that I've talked to is a vegetarian. Every one of them. They said, we will not even allow it in our house because we don't want our children consuming that poison. We know it gets approved. We approve it. Yeah. I've talked to Muslims. I'll talk to anybody. Give me your load. Victoria's Secret? That ain't no secret. When I see that in the mall, my head goes this way. La, 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 la. I don't want to see that. Yeah. But tell me what you got. I'll listen. Let me hear it. And then if I see it lines up with the Bible, I put it in my lecture. Yeah. Questions or comments before we close? We have another offering that we want to take tonight. This helps me to continue to do this as long as the offerings come. You know, I have a backup. I am a licensed substitute school teacher. My parents asked me to get that because they said, what if this doesn't work anymore? You need a backup plan. And I said, well, I'm not going to be a plumber. So I took a special test. If you have a 4-year degree in California, you can take what's called a CBEST, C-B-E-S-T, College Basic Education Standard Testing. And if you pass that, you are licensed for life, forever. And so I am a licensed for life substitute school teacher.